This all started when I was around 15 years old. I was living with my mom and my dad. At the time, both my mom and my dad were Catholic, and they used to make me go to church with them every single Sunday. My dad started to drink. It all started really slowly, with him just going to the bar every once in a while. When we finally realized that something was wrong, he was going out for the whole night. He finally got fired from his job and went into deep debt. One day, my mom decided that enough was enough and left him, taking me to my grandma's house. From that point on, we stopped going to church entirely. We stayed there for some time, and finally, some weeks later, we received the news that my dad had taken his own life by jumping in front of a train in a metro station. My dad's funeral was one of the saddest moments of my life. I loved him a lot, and in the space of less than a year, I saw him devolving into that thing. From there on, life was very hard. My mom would work as an attendant at a store, and we moved to a really small apartment. I also got a job, and I would study and work every single day until I was 18 years old. Even though I was more than old enough to move out from my house, my mom got seriously ill. I started having to work just to bring food home. My mom got diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and she was only 43 years old when she was diagnosed. She got worse and worse by the day. The worst part was that since I had to work just to feed us, I could not keep watching my mom during the day, and I obviously could not afford to pay for anyone else to watch her. I ended up getting a cat to keep her company during the day. Wilson was a stray kitten that I got from someone donating. It was a black cat, and it had a blue eye and a yellow eye. On a Friday, as I was arriving home from work, I found the police outside my apartment building. We lived in a rundown neighborhood, so it wasn't exactly abnormal. We kinda got used to things like that, disturbances and the like. As I got closer, one of the cops stopped me. He told me that my mom had hanged herself by jumping from the balcony. So at 23 years old, I lost both my mom and my dad to suicide. I was very depressed, and in the next weeks, I had constant suicidal thoughts. Even though my grandmother that we used to live with kept calling to check on me every day, I kept working, trying to distract myself from all that I felt. If it weren't for Wilson the cat keeping me company over these days, I probably would have taken my own life. I hated my work. I had no friends, and I cried every night until I slept. One day at work, I overheard two people talking. I worked as a janitor at a store, so it wasn't uncommon for me to listen to people's conversations. They were talking about Ouija boards and how they would try and play with that. I began thinking about what they said. I asked one of my coworkers, "Hey, what's a Ouija board?" He answered that it was a board that people used to contact spirits. I found myself becoming pretty interested on the subject. The idea of maybe being able to talk to my mom and my dad, it kind of brought me some will to live. I got to the city's library Saturday morning and started looking for books about it. After a while, I finally found a book talking about the subject. I took it home with me and spent the rest of the weekend reading it. On Monday, I called my boss up and I told him that I was not feeling very well and could not come in. I was lying, obviously. I found the telephone number in the book. It was from a store in a city around 100 miles away from my town. I had called there before calling my boss, and they told me that they had a Ouija board for sale there. I got in my car. I put Wilson in the car with me and drove all the way to the other city. I got to the store after some searching. It was inside a building, on the 3rd floor. As I got there, I told one of the staff members that I was the one who called about the Ouija board. A tall woman pointed to one of the shelves, and there it was, a Ouija board made from wood. I grabbed the board with one hand and kept holding Wilson with the other. Me and the woman stood there, talking for a bit. She said that there were people around that region that would gladly do a section of Ouija board with me. A very important rule about Ouija was that it apparently was not meant to be played alone. I passed, since I wanted to see for myself if it was actually real. I didn't want to be tricked by anyone or influenced. I wasn't even sure it would work in the first place. As I was finally about to pay for the board, the woman asked me about the cat. I told her that the cat was a friend. She offered me a deal, trading the cat for the board and some other stuff in the store. I found that very weird. She seemed to really want my cat. A lot of people really admired Wilson because of his ocular heterochromacy, but offering to buy him from me, that was a first. I refused the offer, and then I got the board in my car and went straight home. At about 8 p.m., I was ready for my first Ouija session in my own apartment. I turned all of the lights off and started the session alone inside my room. I followed all of the procedures step by step in accordance with the book, and nothing happened. As I was about to give up, the plaquette slowly moved to high. I was speechless. It took me quite some time to even think about making another question. I stood there for some time, talking to an entity that identified itself as Duke. It said it was a neutral entity that wished no harm, but was not good. In time, I started feeling tired, as if my energy was being sucked away from me. I finally got tired and dismissed the entity, and it went away normally. The rest of the week went by really smoothly. I was going to work every day and trying to contact my mom or dad as soon as I got home. During the week, I talked with random spirits, some neutral and some not so good. Thankfully, the book, The Ouija Board from Aleister Crowley, had a guide to deal with that situation. One thing I noticed was that during the week, I was feeling weaker and weaker as the week progressed. When I left work on the Friday, I went straight home to try the board one more time. This time, however, I finally got in contact with my dad. As the entity identified itself as my dad, I started asking questions that only he could ever answer, and sure enough, every single one of the questions were answered correctly. After that, I started crying, as talking to my dad was a very special moment to me. When I was just about to ask him why did he take his own life, the fatigue, it got the best of me, and I ended up passing out in the middle of the session. I woke up later. The whole apartment was in the dark, as all of the candles that I used had all melted. I could feel Wilson lying down by my side. I stood up and turned on all of the lights. I decided that I should maybe stop messing with the Ouija board for at least a couple of days. I took a shower, and then I went to sleep. As I woke up the next day, I felt that something was wrong. Wilson was sleeping on top of me. Usually, Wilson would sleep in a small pillow bed near my bed, and he slept there every single night without fail. Besides that, the next few days were kind of weird. When I arrived home from work, Wilson would not stop following me. I had this weird feeling of being watched all the time. I had this old computer chair in my room, and every day I would wake up with it turned towards me. I remember turning it to the desk every single day before I went to sleep. One night, right before I went to sleep, I started hearing weird noises coming from the bathroom. It was like a wet towel being dragged through the floor. When I went to check what it was, there was just nothing there. I ended up convincing myself that the noise was something wrong with the water tubes in the wall. It was only some nights later that I confirmed that there was something bad going on. I woke up in the middle of the night and opened up my eyes. The light from the street would illuminate part of my room so I could see a little bit. Wilson was sleeping on top of me, and suddenly, I saw the chair in my room slowly turning to my direction. Wilson stood up and started aggressively hissing at the chair. I was paralyzed by fear and feeling really bad. My heart felt like it was going to burst inside my chest. Wilson started meowing really loudly and kept on hissing. I finally reacted and managed to reach the light switch at the side of my bed. Once the light was on, Wilson seemed to calm down, and that weird feeling I had just a few seconds ago went away. I could not sleep that night anymore. The next day, as it was a Saturday, my grandmother called me and, as always, she made an offer for me to go and live with her. This time, out of desperation, I finally accepted. She sent one of my uncles to help me move out the very next day. I only managed to sleep that night because I kept all of the lights on. When I moved out of my house, the phenomenon did not follow me, and I stayed living with my grandmother for the next 3 years. I found another job that paid better than the last one, and my grandmother made a deal with me so I could go to university. Still, I was very, very depressed when I went to university. I had to move to another apartment and live alone. Well, not exactly alone, since Wilson was with me. Aside from that, I would feel completely isolated, and once again, I started contemplating taking my own life. I was making countable sciences at the university, and it was at a calculus class that I met this guy. It was a young dude, probably around 5 years younger than me, who I will call Ben. We started talking for a bit, and he was very interested in supernatural-related stuff. One day, I actually told him about my story with the Ouija board, and he didn't even look at me like I was crazy or anything. He then told me he was into Gosha, the study and summoning of demons. At the time, I didn't think bad about it. I had tried to get into Satanism before, because I was under the impression that God had abandoned me and taken both of my parents from me. I only had contact with Ben for around 6 months, because when calculus finished, we lost contact. He didn't influence me to get into Gosha, but as soon as the semester ended, I started researching a little bit about it. My research even made me go to the university's library and find a book about it. The Solomon's Key was the first real book I read about Gosha. From there, things went crazy pretty fast. I still remember the first time I made a ritual. I gathered all of the stuff and made a ritual inside my own apartment. The apartment where I was living during the university time was much larger than the one I used to live in with my mother. It had 2 bedrooms, a corridor, a living room, a kitchen that had the main door in it, and adjacent to the kitchen, it had a service area used to wash clothes. From the service area to the kitchen, there was a window, even though the service area was not a balcony. From the service area, there were windows to the outside. I did the ritual inside the living room because it was the one that had more space. My cat stood inside the circle with me the whole time. So, the main way that Gosha works is offering the entity small trades, like carving its symbol on a wall or in a piece of wood, just so that what you asked would be done. I used to ask for small favors like doing well in tests and wishing better health for my grandmother, who was at the time starting to show signs of Alzheimer's. With all of that, however, I was not happy. I was still very depressed and still had constant suicidal thoughts. Once, I summoned an entity and asked for one simple thing: happiness. The thing then answered me that what I was asking was way over its league and that I should be prepared to pay a very big price for something like that. I understood what it meant. The next week, I devoted myself to studying a way to make the pact. Now, the first thing about making the pact is that it's not just any entity that can make a pact with you. Souls also have different values, and the most important, there is no summoning an entity to do that. The only thing you have to do is wish for the pact, and eventually, an entity will contact you. And so, on a Friday, I was going back home from the university, and it was already about 9 p.m. The street of my apartment complex was completely empty, aside from a man standing right on my way home. As I approached him, he called my name, my actual name. I'd never seen him before. I stopped, realizing that I did not know that dude. I asked who he was. He just said, "I'm the one you're looking for." I stopped and realized what was happening. I won't get into details about the deal, but weirdly enough, nobody ever came into the street the whole time that we were talking. Also, I ended up trading what I thought was happiness for me from my own soul. That night, I did not sleep very well. I could not forget the man's face, how he had that inhuman grin in his face the whole time. The next week, a lot of things started to change around me. First, I got promoted on my job. Then, A girl that I considered very beautiful that would go to classes with me actually called me to go out with her, even though I had not talked to that girl more than maybe 10 words the whole semester. My grandmother's condition seemed to have stabilized a bit, and for the first time since I was around 15 years old, I felt happiness. One day, I arrived at home from the university at night, and strangely, Wilson did not come to greet me at the door. I started calling him around the house until I saw him laying on the floor of my bedroom. He was still breathing but was not very responsive. I immediately took him to the vet at night, and the vet determined that the cat had a high fever. They took some blood samples, and after the fever was gone, they sent me home with the cat. From that day forward, the cat was not so responsive. He would spend most of the day lying down. After some days, the vet called and said the cat had nothing wrong with it. I took him to multiple vets, and all of them made countless exams, but they found nothing. Still, the cat had constant fevers, and even taking medication was not helping. The cat eventually stopped eating, and I had to feed it by hand every single day. I thought that the happiness that I asked for, that it would not let something like that happen, but it did. Then one night, I made a ritual contacting an entity. I then asked why that was happening, and the entity didn't answer. After that, when I was close to sleep, I started thinking about what I had done. I ended up realizing that I was tricked. Most of what I asked was not going to bring happiness in the long term, and I had forgotten about the one that stood by my side this whole time. I cried a lot that night and took to the internet to research if there was something that I could do, and I found nothing. At around 3 a.m., a link appeared on top of the results. I couldn't really remember correctly what it was, but it was something about salvation being about God and related stuff, but really, down under the page, there was a prayer. St. Michael's Archangel Prayer. I was so desperate that I printed it out on a piece of paper, got on my knees near Wilson, and prayed for the first time since I was 15 years old. The next day, I had to go early for work, and when I arrived from work, the cat seemed to be more responsive. He was walking and started to eat. However, at night, I realized that something was wrong. I would hear the chairs in the kitchen moving by themselves at night, and by morning, when I went out to check them, they were exactly the way I left them the other day. 2 days later, I received a 2-week notice from my job. I was being fired. Things kept on getting worse and worse, but I kept on praying every single night, and then I threw all of the gauche stuff away. Wilson was getting better, but still was very debilitated. One night, I arrived home from university, and Wilson was once again at the door waiting for me. He could barely walk by himself, so I carried him to his bed. It was raining heavily outside. I did everything I had to do and went to sleep. Suddenly, I woke up to the sound of thunder. I looked at my side and Wilson was not there in his bed. I tried to turn on the lights, but I realized the building was completely out of energy. I got my cell phone flashlight and started walking in the apartment, calling out for Wilson. Then I heard movement in the kitchen. I started shaking and slowly walked into the kitchen. I illuminated the place, but I saw nothing. Then I turned the flashlight in the direction of the window to the service area, and right behind the window, I saw that thing. It was something horrendous. Its face skin was dark brown and had a big face and lots of red eyes. It had many horns and a big mouth that opened up, showing lots of pointy teeth. When I saw it, I felt as if my sanity was being drained by that thing. I got close to the main door and turned the key to unlock it. The door unlocked, but when I tried to turn on the handle, it was stuck, almost as if something was holding it. The thing called out my name, Anon. I looked at the thing again, and it was going through the service area's door and coming towards me. I started crying and shaking. Then I heard something hissing by my side. Wilson appeared, jumped on the table of the kitchen, and with a loud and aggressive meow, jumped with its paws first on the face of the thing. As soon as it did, the thing backed off. The thing and Wilson were fighting and making noises in the service area. The door handle suddenly opens, and I ran outside. I stood for the whole night outside. being way too scared to come back inside. When it was morning already, I decided to go inside my apartment. When I did, it looked as if a tornado had passed through my apartment. Everything inside was just tossed around everywhere. I finally found Wilson in the living room. He was dead. The death of Wilson was the last straw for me. After that very same day, I went back to my grandmother's house. I started going to church again, and after some time, I was told that there was a way to reverse the pact. To this day, I still remember the feeling I had when I saw that thing, and I still pray and go to church every single day. May this story serve as a lesson for you. Happiness is a goal, but you can never reach it. The most you can do is pursue it, and try to be happy as much as you can. God bless you. It was around 5 or 6 years ago that this incident happened to me. I'm hoping that someone here can shed some light on what exactly happened. I was around 18 years old when this happened. 2 friends and I were in the busy section of town, just hanging around. The town is really old, and goes all the way back to the late 1800s. There is a legend in the town of a park that used to be a graveyard. Legend has it that the graveyard was smack right in the middle of the neighborhood, and that the people thought it was an eyesore to look at. The town decides to turn the graveyard into a park, but for some reason, never removes the bodies from the graves, so yeah. I convinced my friends to come with me to said park, to see if the rumors of phantoms and sightings alike are true. When we get there, we sit on the bench on the right side of the park. The park is split in the middle by a small road, one side being lit by streetlights, and the other completely pitch black. We talk and we have some laughs. Nothing is really happening. We move to the other side and have a seat. There is still light where we decide to sit, because we were pussies. We talk some more. Friend 1 is kinda silent. Hey Anon, what the hell is that? I look in the direction of where friend 1 is pointing, and I don't see anything. He replies again, Dude, what the hell is that? I look again and I see a figure. This figure is tall, taller than a house, in the shape of a candy cane, and is pitch black. My heart begins racing because I cannot believe what I am seeing. Friend 2 cannot see anything because he forgot his glasses at home. Friend 1 and I sit in silence, watching the figure. As I am watching this figure, I notice the ground below it looks weird, simmering almost. The best way I have described this is when you're in the desert and look off in the distance, and the heat is so strong the ground moves in waves. The figure is coming towards us at a very slow, snail-like pace. My friends and I decide to leave and walk back to my house. As we are walking, friend number 1 and I take glances behind us. We get to my house. Crisis averted. I let them sleep over because their houses are far away and it's 12 a.m. Friend 1 and I cannot sleep, so we stay up and chat. Friend 2 cannot sleep because we are talking. As we are talking, we hear a cat hiss and then my gate start rattling. Friend number 2 looks up at my window and says, Dude, what the hell is that? I tell him, it's just a cat, go to bed. Dude, that is not a cat. He then keeps his eyes on my window for a few more seconds and decides to lay back asleep. A couple days later, we recall the incidents with some of our other friends. I asked friend number 2 what he saw at the window. He said it was a black figure that looked like it was holding a pizza box on its head. He went further, stating that when I told him it was a cat, he accepted it so that he could fall back asleep. Now, mind you, my room was about 8 feet off the ground. The incident was brought up about 2 years later at a party. Friend number 1 claimed that when we were walking back to my house, he saw the thing following us and said it had red eyes. Deep, piercing, red eyes. We do not go near that park anymore. I've got a non-paranormal story. It requires a little bit of a setup though. My girlfriend and I had a terrible breakup a few years back. We decided that we could not live together and I moved out. I had no place to stay at the time, so I just crashed in my car. Then my car crapped out on me. It was totally useless, and I was suddenly living on the streets. I was still working though. I was basically living motel to motel, finding friends to stay with occasionally, but I've got this stupid sense of pride. I didn't want to feel like a burden to them. One night, I get off work and make the long trek to one of my usual motels. This stretch of road is pretty weird. It's a high traffic zone, but only during the day. So there are all these strip centers and businesses, but they're all closed up by the time I'm out of work. The walk is really, really dark. Anyway, this car passes by me, going the opposite way on the road. I hear him slow down and then bust a U-turn behind me. I glance back and see the car approaching me. The guy in the car pulls up next to me and asks me if I need a ride home. I tell him I'm good, thanks. My motel is just down the road. I lie and say my friend is on his way to pick me up, and he responds saying, "Nah, you don't have anybody coming for you. Hop in." I tell him I'm good, and he revs up and pulls the car into my path, blocking me from walking. Get the fuck in the car, now. When he said this, I just took off running. I assume the dude's got a gun, but I also figure that I'm screwed no matter what I do, so I may as well make a break for it and at least try. I know that there is a building down the road that's open 24 hours. If I don't run over or get shot, I figure I will just hide in there. This was my entire plan. It's on the other side of the street though. I make a break for it across 4 lanes and a median, just hoping that some random car does not come barreling down the road. I glance back, and the dude in the car does not move. I get to the other side and keep booking it down the shoulder. I glance back again, and the car is now cutting across the 4 lanes and the median, chasing me. There is a ditch on the side of the road. I run into the grass and hop over the ditch, hoping this idiot will follow me and just ruin his car. He does. He doesn't ruin his car though. He actually clears the ditch. But I hear a pop. He must have gotten a blown out tire, thank God. I hop back over the ditch and keep running down the shoulder. The dude can't cross out of the grassy area due to the ditch. He won't be able to cross either until he hits the parking lot of the building that I'm going to. Meanwhile, the grass is slowing him down. He begins to lag way behind. I just keep going for another 15 minutes, trying my best not to slow down, hoping this asshole does not make it back on the road before I get to the motel. He doesn't, and I never see him again. But fuck me, I will never book a night at that motel ever again. A little background before I start the story. In Southeast Asia, we have this concept where you can keep Djinn as pets. Their main use were to guard your properties, personal safety, or to ward off enemies. Djinn, by the way, are like evil spirits, malevolent spirits. These things can be passed down through generations, and they can still linger in your ancestral homes or around family members long after they are forgotten. I was around 9 to 11 years old when this happened. I was with family members. We went to our grandparents' home to celebrate Eid. There's probably about 30 people staying there. It's the end of Ramadan, the holy fasting month. Muslims believe that Shaitan, the devil, are tied up during Ramadan to prevent them from disrupting Muslims who were busy doing worship throughout the whole month. The 30th day of Ramadan ends at dusk. In Islam, a new day begins at dusk/sundown. It's now the month of Shawwal. The Eid is tomorrow. It's close to 11 p.m., and the whole family are preparing to sleep. It's going to be a busy day tomorrow. The north and west side of this wooden house is surrounded by bush and small forest. On the east side, about 15 meters away, is another home. On the south side, a small unpaved road that takes to the main road. Everyone is home. Doors are locked. My family has a room for themselves, with my elder sister sleeping next to the east wall. I am next to her. We all sleep on futons. Suddenly, there is the sound of a motorcycle approaching the house from the unpaved road. Quite strange, as it is not customary for people to come visiting at this hour. Plus, everyone is at home. My mom said loudly, "Who's coming at this hour?" She's a brave woman with a foul mouth, and that remark kind of got us into trouble later. Imagine, this is the crappy Asian motorcycle that you see in Top Gear Vietnam Special. The bike stops at the front door on the south side. Nobody is knocking. Nobody is entering the house. Okay. Suddenly, there is a strange sound on the roof. The roof is corrugated iron. We call it the zinc roof locally. Whatever is walking on top of it can be heard throughout the entire house. It actually sounds like someone is sweeping the roof. People around the house are beginning to get nervous. I started getting really sweaty. My mom decides to open up her mouth again. She spoke really loudly. Who is sweeping on the roof at this hour? Local belief says that you are not supposed to address whatever strange thing is happening around you, because the spirits or whatever, they will take that as an encouragement. Big mistake. The sound immediately intensifies. Now we hear someone running on the roof. Immediately later, we hear hundreds of birds in the trees around the house just going crazy. Like caw caw caw, really loud, like the ones you see on National Geographic. It's really unsettling. The sound on the roof is now interspersed with bird sounds. It's like a jungle in here. I began reciting whatever verse of the Quran I knew. Now comes the worst part. Suddenly, we hear moaning sounds from the east wall. Actually sounds like a dying dog in great pain, just whimpering. The sound moves from the east wall to the corner where it meets the north wall, and then back again to where it first started, right next to my sister. The sounds start going crazy. My dick shrivels in fear. Do we need that part? Palms are sweaty, like spaghetti. This is a Malay village. Stray dogs are rare, and they do not venture to homes. Half an hour through the ordeal, my scumbag sister did the douchiest thing she did so far. Anon, change places with me. Are you kidding me? There is a ghost right next to that wall. I did what she said anyways. The sounds continued for like 3 hours and subsided slowly. My scumbag sister managed to fall asleep halfway through it all. I did not sleep for the rest of that night. It was the worst Eid night ever. Whatever those things are, I think they're coming back home after a month spent in chains.